Someone You Should Know. A program about people you know and even more that you don't. Hosted by Stuart Sachs, veteran, husband, father, and grandfather. Now, here's your host, Stuart Sachs.
Well, welcome everyone. It's a brand new year and a brand new series of Someone You Should Know. I'm absolutely thrilled to be into the year of 2021. Glad to put 2020 behind us. I hope everybody had a good New Year's and all, and has bright outlook for the coming year. And having said that, I have a guest that took close to 60 years to reconnect with this gentleman. And I am so thrilled to have Father Leo Gavrilos on the show with me this morning. Father Leo, welcome.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Welcome to you. Happy New Year to you, your family, and to your audience. Thank
you. Same to you. This is really kind of exciting for both of us, because thanks to a very dear friend, and I would be remiss if we didn't mention Chuck Biller from Hammond High School, who has over the years been very much involved with putting together our reunions, and a few years ago started getting multiple classes together from like 63 to 64, 5 and 6 together. And Chuck, because of COVID, started doing these virtual reunions a few months ago, and all of a sudden on one of those virtual reunions, man, I see Leo Gavrilos's picture is on the screen, and as I say, we attended high school together back in the very early 60s, 60 years ago. It's a long time, but we're both still upright and we're both still doing well. Welcome to the show from Sheboygan, Wisconsin.
Thank you, Stuart. Pleasure to be here, and honor to be here, actually.
I was just all smiles when we saw each other on the screen, and we just kept nodding each other. And as soon as the virtual show was over, we started emailing and texting each other. And I caught you up and I said, hey, I got a radio show and I would love to have you on, because you've just got a great story ever since our time together in high school. And you are a Greek Orthodox priest at St. Spyridon Greek Orthodox Church in Sheboygan, Wisconsin.
Yes.
A man of the cloth, as they say. And you've been doing it, as I said, I didn't realize that right out of high school, basically, you had your heart set on going into the seminary and becoming a priest. And so that's the direction that you took.
Yes, it was. We had gotten my freshman year in high school in 1960. A young pastor with a young family, Father Peter Georgicakes, came to St. Demetrius Greek Orthodox Church, which was right next door to your synagogue. And I was just totally impressed by him, completely impressed by him. His liturgics, the way he approached the ministry, the things he said in his sermons. And I said, that's what I want to do. And I basically followed that path because of him.
And I mean, it's a beautiful story, because you've spent most of your life in the Midwest.
Yes.
And where did you go to the seminary?
It's in Brookline, Massachusetts.
Okay.
A suburb, a very large, a very nice suburb right outside of Boston. I was there for 4 years. And after that, I became a public school teacher in Glendale Heights, Illinois for 4 years, because I felt I was just too young for ordination. Then an opportunity came up in St. Louis, Missouri, and it seemed like a good opportunity as an assistant priest. So I went there, and that's where my ministry really started.
And you've been all over the Midwest. So most of your time was spent in Michigan and Wisconsin.
Yes.
But it was interesting because your beautiful wife, Joanne, you have been married for 53 years?
Yeah, 52, actually.
52. Okay.
Yeah, I added one. I shouldn't have.
Oh, okay. Well, but, it just seems like only yesterday.
Yeah.
But The question arose when Lauren and I were talking about it, and that's why I want you to share it with our audience. Is we said, whoa, wait a minute, time out. He's a priest, but he's married. How does that work?
In the Orthodox Church, whether it's the Russian Orthodox, the Greek Orthodox, the Serbian, the Antiochian, in our tradition, you can be married prior to ordination. In the Greek Orthodox Church, once you graduate from the seminary, if you declare that you want to remain celebrant, that you do not want to be married, you have to work in one of the offices in the archdiocese of the Greek Orthodox Church for a period of 3 years to make sure this is the path you want to pursue. After 3 years, as some type of a clerk or a worker, an employee in the archdiocese, if you still want to remain celebrant and never be married, then you can be ordained. But once ordained, you cannot be married. If you want to marry, you have to leave the church. So obviously, Joanne and I, we wanted to be married, and we were married, and I was ordained 4 years after that, after spending some time in the public school system in Illinois.
And 52 years. Wow. Yeah. It's beautiful. We're catching up to you. We're about 5 years behind you.
Okay. Well, you'll get there. You're doing good. You'll get there.
And you have a family?
Yes, I do. I have a son who's the chief of police in a suburb of La Crosse, Wisconsin. They have 2 boys. One is a freshman in college and one is a junior in high school. They're both tremendous athletes. My daughter works in human resources for Aurora Healthcare and here in Sheboygan. And she and her husband, Jeff, have a boy, Chase, who's 12 years old. And he's a pretty good athlete too.
Boy,
we're real proud of both the kids.
Well, your daughter in the healthcare industry must have been pretty much challenged this past year.
Oh yeah, they put her working out of her home right away, and she's been there ever since. And she's in human resources.
You were talking about the grandkids being athletes.
Yes.
You were an athlete in high school.
Not really. I would have loved to play football with guys like Chuck Duncan and John Boyajian and Gary Love and those great guys, Delmar Kuchis. But I had to make a choice. I had to either work and save up for the seminary, or I had to, play sports. So I chose working. I worked for Paul's Drive-In on the corner of 169th and Calumet Avenue, and I worked there for 4 years flipping hamburgers. And if you remember Paul's, it was like Made Right over by Hammond High. It was a loose hamburger, and I was very good at putting a quarter of a pound of meat on a spatula and flipping it up in the air and catching every kernel of meat on the bun. So it was good. And I think 2 other of our girls, Terry and Carol Herquist, worked at Paul's too at that time. It was a good place to work. I started at 75 cents an hour. I think when I left,
75 cents an hour.
75 cents an hour.
Was that in all you could eat? Was that in all you could eat?
Oh yeah. Paul, we could eat there 3 times. He didn't care. He didn't charge us for eating. He was good. He was a good guy to work for. He was a Navy man. He was a Navy recruiter in Hammond when I was with him. Good guy, good family. But it was fun working at Paul's. Paul's Drive-In was a lot like Arnold's Drive-In in the old show Happy Days. Arnold's reminded me so much of Paul's. But it was good.
And I grew up over in the Woodmar section of Hammond. We had the Serenade.
The Serenade. That's right.
Serenade. It was a round, kind of a round restaurant, and they had the waitresses on roller skates.
Yes.
It came out with the service to the car. So, there's probably a lot of people that are listening and watching to this show right now that have absolutely no clue what we're talking about.
I know. Unless they may have watched Happy Days at some point.
That's right. The fact that you mentioned Happy Days, that kind of puts it back a little bit more into perspective.
Yeah.
But in fact, a good dear friend of yours chimed in, Ray Rada, who remembered you working over at Paul's Drive-In, and there's oh, they're showing up on the screen. Chuck Biller just chimed in, says hello to Stu and Leo. Well, I'm glad you're with us, Chuck, and thank you very, very much, because you're the glue that connected us together.
Yes, you are. And actually, well, Ray, I'm so glad to hear his name. I always wondered what happened to him. Ray and I went through grade school together at Edison, and then we kind of lost touch, as quite often happens when you go to high school. And Ray and I were friends. We were close back at Edison, and I'm glad he chimed in. But I've got to give credit to John Boyajian, because John is the guy that pretty much put me in contact with Chuck Biller, and I was able to be a part of those Zoom meetings, and it's really because of John. John and I have been communicating now for at least a couple of years. I just happened to see his name as an ear, nose, and throat specialist. I was going through some real serious sinus issues in all four of my sinus cavities, and I saw John's name, and I said, whoa, John Boyajian, Boise, Idaho. So we kind of connected, and we've been going back and forth ever since. I hope at some point to meet up with John. He has family outside of Minneapolis, and Minneapolis is only maybe an hour from La Crosse, Wisconsin. And I hope sometime that John and I can hook up there in Minneapolis, kind of a midpoint. So anyway, but I have John to thank. But Ray, good hearing from you indirectly.
Yeah, and I understand you were talking a little bit about some of the other things that you've done, and you've had some interesting jobs along the way. We were joking about you being a PhD. That it is not a doctor of philosophy.
No,
it was a professional hearse driver.
Yeah.
And that kind of swings back to Ray Rada too, because wasn't there some talk after high school or so about a few of you guys getting together and going into the funeral business?
Well, there was one of our classmates by the name of Richard Gent, and I think he did open a couple of funeral homes in the Hammond area. And Richard was a big husky guy, and that's what he wanted to do right off the jump. He wanted to get into the funeral home business. So we all kind of talked about it. We'd sit around the lunchroom table and say, yeah, let's all become funeral home directors. And
you volunteers, I'll drive the hearse.
Yeah, I'll drive the hearse.
Well, it's fun. But speaking about sports, and of course, I too, I would love to have played some sports. Yeah. The only thing I played was Hammond High had an intramural soccer team, and I played with Coach Carroll, who is also the band director. Yeah, and he did intramural soccer, and I did that. But our high school at that time were fierce. They were state champions in football. We had an extremely strong basketball team, untouchable in swimming. Yes. But weren't you also on the wrestling team?
I was in a wrestling team. I got to wrestle for 2 years. Coach Clark and Coach Deek, they knew I worked at Paul's Drive-In, so they cut me a lot of slack in terms of leaving practice early once in a while. And I probably won as many matches as I lost. I wasn't anything great, but it was a lot of fun because it really got me in shape. It's a great sport. And so I did wrestle for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I did letter. But here's something else too. I couldn't afford at that time to buy my letterman's jacket. I just couldn't afford it. And I think back then they were about $50. And
right. And it's 75 cents an hour. You had to flip a lot of burgers.
And my mom was a single parent. I lost my dad when I was a year old. So she was living pretty much on Social Security. But my good wife, Joanne, bought me a Hammond High letterman's jacket about 3 years ago. And I wear it all winter long.
Really outstanding. That's outstanding. Oh boy, such great memories. So when you finished in the seminary, you said you taught for a while, and then finally you became ordained. You started in St. Louis.
Yes.
So what was the the progression from there, from St. Louis, I think you went up to Michigan.
Went up to Grand Rapids, Michigan. I was there for about 10 years. And then we came to Sheboygan, Wisconsin. That was the first time around. And I had a parish council at that time that things didn't work out. And actually, I took a job in admissions at a small private college here in Sheboygan, Lakeland College. It's now Lakeland University. And I worked my way up to director of admissions. But on Sundays, I would fill in different parts of the Chicago area, Wisconsin, for priests that were out of town on vacation or sick. So I was still a clergyman, and I had the best of both worlds. I was at Lakeland College as the director of admissions, and we were pretty successful. I was at Lakeland for about 16 years, and I also got to teach in their evening adult education program. I taught history classes. My favorite was the 1960s. It was a junior honors class, and it was about the 1960s. And I had more fun with that class because I talked about the music, I talked about the fashions, I talked about the artists. Obviously, you talked about Vietnam. Obviously, you talked about the civil rights movement. But you talked about all the other stuff that went on in the 1960s. I did a whole section in Woodstock. And that was probably my favorite class. In fact, the license plates on one of my cars is the 60s, and the other one is the 70s. I also taught a class in the European Holocaust. The dean of faculty came up to me about a week before the fall semester started, and he said, "Leo, I got a problem." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "What do you know about the Holocaust?" And I said, "I know that about 5.9 million people, Jewish people, died, but that's it." And that was a hard class. That I said, "Okay, I'll do it." And it took me about a week to prepare. And that was a tough one. That was a real tough one because I did a very detailed account of what the Jewish people went through during this horrible, horrible time. And at the end, my last class before the finals, there was a survivor of Auschwitz here in Sheboygan. Her name was Fellow Warshaw, God rest her soul. She had survived Auschwitz. She had survived a death march back to Berlin when the Russians first started freeing the camps there.
Right.
And her sister and her were the only two survivors. And I would bring Fella in to last class, and it was a 3-hour class, in a very matter-of-fact way, no gnashing of teeth, no beating of breast. She told of what happened. She watched her entire family killed during that time, and only her and her sister survived. And the one story she told was that when they were taken in the freight trains to Auschwitz, Joseph Mengele stood at one end of the ramp there, and as people walked towards him, they either got a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Thumbs up, you lived, you went to the camp. Thumbs down, it was the end of the road. And it was him or one of his henchmen, doctors, who would give the thumbs up or the thumbs down. And as Fella and her sister, they were only about 1.5 years apart, but apparently they looked like twins. Mm-hmm. The people were shouting to them, "Say you're twins, say you're twins." So when Fella got up there, being the older sister, she says, "We're twins." Well, they were first taken to exploratory laboratories, and some experiments were done because at that time the German hierarchy, Hitler, was trying to find a gene that would reproduce twins or triplets. And it was a story I'll never forget. But I had football players because I was very involved with the football team. I did a lot of recruiting with football coaches. I had football players in that class. I had basketball players, wrestlers, and there wasn't a dry eye when she was finished.
I can imagine.
And that was a tough class. But the 60s were a lot of fun. And I taught some other history classes. I taught political science, and I learned a lot about politics during that time. But I did that, and then I went back to the full-time priesthood. An opportunity came up in Rock Island, Illinois. It was a nice big church. I went there, and then I had an opportunity to come back to Sheboygan. And before that, I was working at the funeral home
as a PhD.
as a PhD.
You have served in several Greek Orthodox churches. Some of them you said are rather small, like your current congregation, and some of them very large.
Yeah.
Does it matter at all the size of the church as to your interaction with the congregation, or it is the liturgy is the same, the services are the same, and the connection with your parishioners is the same?
Well, in the larger parishes, people are spread out. I mean, in St. Louis had about 1,200 families, and they were spread out all over St. Louis County. So we became very close friends with some of the families, especially the youth director that I worked with at St. Louis. His name was Harry Lamarckis. He just recently passed away. But we became close with some of those people. I was very close with the pastor. His name was Father Andrews. And we had a good relationship there. But it was hard because you put a lot of miles on your car. The church was in downtown St. Louis, actually right across the street from Jewish Hospital, which is a renowned hospital there.
Yes.
And I was driving probably 20 miles a day back and forth to work because we lived out in West County. In Grand Rapids, you're talking maybe 150 families. It was much easier to connect with people there because they all lived in Grand Rapids. And I don't know if a lot of people know this. Grand Rapids is a city of about 400,000 people. It's a very large city. I think it's the second largest city in Michigan. And then when we came here to Sheboygan, I mean, much smaller, maybe at its height, it had maybe 70, 80 families. A lot of those people have passed away. And then you get to develop much closer relationships with people. The liturgy is exactly the same. The length of the liturgy will depend on the makeup of the parish itself. Here in Sheboygan right now, it's dominated by all English-speaking people who were born and raised here, who went to college and they have the college degree. So I do everything in English. Nothing is repeated in both languages. The first time I was here, a lot of the liturgy had to be repeated in both languages to satisfy the needs of those people that wanted Greek and those people that wanted English. So that will determine the length of the service. But the service from A to Z is exactly the same, no matter where you go.
Well, and you're now serving, second and third generation families, and that's the same way with in the Jewish religion. So much of the services used to be in Hebrew, and some of the younger generation doesn't understand Yiddish and Hebrew, so a lot more English. But your story is just fascinating to me because I guess the perception that a lot of people have with the clergy is that they're a little bit more, stiff-necked, a little bit more serious and all. You have had a personality that has been an open book and out there forever. And I would imagine that people are drawn to you like a magnet. I'm sure. What's this? There it is. There's his high school Letterman sweater. In fact, I wasn't sure how you were going to dress this morning, so I've got my sweatshirt.
Oh, you got your sweatshirt. Okay, there you go.
From 1963. Yeah.
Actually, one of my Christmas presents this year was a T-shirt, which I didn't wear because it's too cold. Actually, I got to go to work. It's Hammond High class of '64. So I've got that, and I'll wear that later on. I'm very proud of Hammond High. Hammond High has a very, very special place in my heart. I'm glad I went there. I'm glad I graduated from there. Those were 4 great years with some great, great guys that I graduated with, and girls. I mean, we had 63 and 64. You had Del Kuchis, Ed Sherry, a lot of those kids, Billy Enox. We had Chuck Duncan and John Boyajian and a lot of the girls that we went to school. Those were 2 really good classes.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Dr. John Boyajian. Yeah, he was quarterback of the football.
Oh, yeah.
And if he was playing today, I think he would have been an MVP easily.
Oh, he would have.
He was not only a great playmaker, and those were in the days where they didn't have the communication between the quarterback and the coach, on the sideline telling you what plays. John was a playmaker.
Yes, he was. John called the plays in the huddle.
Yeah, and it was amazing. And as you said, he's out in Boise, Idaho. He's joined us on some of our virtual get together, our reunions. But one thing that I want the audience to know, we're talking about our high school in Northwest Indiana. I would encourage anybody that's listening and watching this show, if you have any connection to your high school, be it 50 years or more like we do, or maybe it was just 10 or 20, 30 years ago, if there is even a hint of a reunion, don't miss it. Yeah. Because reconnecting with those folks from your high school and everything it's powerful. It does great things to your soul. It does great things to your emotions, to your mind, brings back so many great memories, like talking about Paul's Drive-In and all of those things. It just kind of gets the juices flowing again. And it brings back a time that everybody really needs to remember. And we've just gone through a very, very tough year. So when you can reconnect with some of the folks from back in high school, gosh, we can get on Facebook and locate almost anybody now. Yeah. And again, a shout out to Chuck Biller, because he's almost made it his calling to make sure that he can reconnects with as many of the classmates as possible. In fact, we are all supposed to try and get together. Yeah. There he posts on the screen, "Go Wildcats." We're all supposed to get together next spring, hopefully, or this coming spring or summer, because after more than 100 years, our dearly beloved high school is being torn down in the name of progress, and they're building a new school. And we wanted to have what they call the last look reunion, and get all of us back there in front of our old high school together. And it's something that I think everybody should share if they have the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't wait for this to happen, because I do want to come back. And I think part of the weekend will include going to the new high school, which I'd like to see, but I'm kind of saddened that it won't be Hammond High anymore. It'll be Hammond Central, but I mean, that's a personal thing for me.
Right. Well, and all of us have said the same thing, and it's also going to be a different mascot. It's not going to be the Wildcats anymore.
What is going to be the mascot?
I want to say the Wolves or something, but anything other than a Wildcat doesn't work for me.
Yeah, and purple and white. I've got a thing for purple and white. I have clothes that are purple and white. Of course, my Letterman's jacket. I go swimming every day at a local health club here. Actually, it's the American Club, owned by Kohler Company. They have a tremendous 25-yard lap pool, and my bathing suits are all either purple or purple and white. So I like Northwestern because they're the Northwestern Wildcats, purple and white.
Right.
So anyway, but I am somewhat saddened that it won't be Hammond High anymore, but great memories there. Those were happy days. The one thing I used to teach in the 60s is November 22nd, 1963 was the day, unfortunately, that I felt this nation lost its innocence.
Right.
And but other than, they were happy days. They were real happy days. And actually, they have reruns here of Happy Days, and I'll watch it once in a while.
Where were you on that day when Kennedy was shot?
Well, we were, I think, at the fourth hour lunch. Yeah, we were at fourth hour lunch. And a guy named Buzzy Johnson and I were down at the local Dairy Queen there, getting our Dairy Queen with a penny dip. The owner there would dip it in a little bit and give us a little bit of chocolate on the top. And then we came back and everybody's saying, "Oh my God, people are crying. We were told that the rest of the day was called off to go home, turn on your TV set. So we were at fourth hour lunch. And of course, you didn't have the technology that you do today. I mean, I think we were all called in the auditorium and told go home because of this. And that's where I was, fourth hour lunch.
And it's interesting that on critical and special days and dates like that, we kind of all recall where we were and what we were doing.
Yeah.
I was in a class at Indiana University, and all of a sudden they came on the speaker and said classes are dismissed immediately. The president has been shot. Yeah. And then when my wife and I moved to Dallas area about 7 years ago, they have tours of the old depository down at Dealey Plaza where it happened, and it's kind of a surreal place to be when you know that you were near that spot where it happened so many years ago.
Well, it's amazing because I remember Walter Cronkite breaking down on the CBS network, which I think in Hammond was Channel 2. Well, in the Chicagoland area was Channel 2. And him breaking down, and the effect it still has, because they are still writing books about the men who killed Kennedy. I just recently read one. There was a special on one of the networks running this past week, the men who killed Kennedy. I mean, there are still questions about that. I don't think ever really been solved. I don't think it ever will be solved. But it was a time that had an impact. And then you had 9/11. I think we all remember where we were at there. I was at the copy machine at Lakeland College making copies for my class that night. And
it's amazing to think that this year, in this September, we will celebrate 20 years since that tragic day.
That tragic day, yeah. I tell my grandchildren, I says, remember this COVID-19 thing, because you guys are living through history, and this is going to be talked about for years to come. So,
not only that, but you talk about statistics, the effects of COVID-19, that we are losing more people every day to this disease than died on 9/11.
9/11, yeah.
It's okay. Enough with the sadness.
Yes, enough.
We'll talk. I wanted to let the people know you are with at Saint Spyridon. That's Spyridon.
Yes.
I'm going to encourage those that are listening and watching, if you have the opportunity at your leisure, go to Saint St. That's St. Spyridon, Sheboygan.org, the website and all, and just to experience the beauty of your church.
Well, thank you.
I did send over to Mark. Maybe he can share it on the screen. What the church looks like. It's amazing, the frescoes, and this is a church that was built when more than 100 years ago.
106 years ago, actually.
106 years ago, and it's very, very ornate. Your service it's very moving, and for a young Jewish guy like me, to say that it's very inviting, it's very moving, it's beautiful, the liturgy. And I got to tell you something, Leo, you got a set of pipes. You can sing pretty good. Maybe that goes back to your Motown days.
Yeah.
you carry a tune pretty good there. And it's a beautiful young choir that you have that is chanting the liturgy throughout the service, that I just found very mesmerizing.
Well, they come from a family of 10 kids. Those young girls, they're 3 sisters. They know music, and they do a nice job. We lost our choir simply because you can't have a choir in the church. It's part of the protocol. You can't have a choir. You can have one chanter, or you can have 2 or 3 chanters, as long as they're from the same family.
There you are.
Yeah. So, I mean, we got these girls, and we're, depending on how long these protocols Right now, we can have 25% of our total seating capacity in church. For us, that's about 40 people. I haven't gotten close to 40 people. We've had as many as 25 or 30 when we live stream, and that's what you saw.
Yes.
But, yeah, they do a nice job.
I think that's been the upside, at least to this pandemic, is because you have been able to live stream. You've been able to reach out to those shut-ins, to a lot of the senior community that physically can't, that aren't mobile enough to get to the churches. So they have been able to follow. Certainly, people like me, I attended your service from the Dallas area. The miles were erased, and it was like being right there in the congregation. And a lot of people are reconnecting with their churches and synagogues because of this live streaming. And I think that's an important thing for all of us to connect to.
Well, we have people that were born and raised here that live in Milwaukee, Chicago, and they can watch us, and they still support us. They're still supporting Stewart's. We have what we call a 3-day Greek Fest here in Sheboygan. I believe it's probably the second biggest food festival in Sheboygan County. We couldn't do it this year, of course, but we have these families from Milwaukee and Chicago that come back, and they take a week's vacation to work Greek Fest. So we stay connected that way, and the live streaming does do that right now, obviously, for people who are afraid to go out in public because they have special health conditions. So I just hope they all come back to church when this thing is over.
Right. Yeah. And are we kind of setting a precedent? Because if we continue to stream, are they going to say, hey, it's a lot more comfortable to attend services from my living room couch than to physically go? But who knows when that new normal is gonna happen. Hey, Mark, if you're there, I sent you over another photo, and if you can put that photo up on the screen for just a moment, I'm gonna shock my dear friend Leo, and he may recognize it. And I reached out to all of our classmates to let them know that we were going to be doing this show together. And there's just been a constant stream all week of everybody who sent in notes about, oh, I remember Leo, what a great guy he was in high school. But here it comes.
For me.
Remember that? Leo Gavrilos said 1964. And you got the same smile, my friend. Got the same great smile. Little less hair, but
a lot less hair.
But the same great smile. We were talking a little bit earlier about your services, and do you follow? And by the way, move a little bit to your right a little bit, because Joanne, you're sitting there, and I see your shoulder, and we should probably say hi to you too.
Hello.
Good to see you. And now that you're there, 53 years, or going on 53 years with this guy, what's he really all about?
Whatever you see is that's how he is.
What you see is what you get.
What you get. Yep.
And aren't we lucky for that? we are. You saw it first right here on KVGI Radio.
Looking forward to seeing everybody at the reunion.
It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be some sad times seeing our old building gone. But did you also attend Hammond High?
I did for I have a twin sister. Do you remember us, Kathy and Joanne Fichalis?
Yes. Oh my goodness! Now I got to go back to my yearbooks.
Yep. So we went to Hammond High for, I think it was about a year and a half, and then we transferred to Tech. It's no longer
Which
there.
is no longer there.
Right. Yeah. We were the Hammond Wildcats, and that was the Tech Tigers, wasn't it?
Tigers. Yep. Brown and gold.
Right. Yeah. And I guess what, Minnesota is kind of brown and gold, aren't they?
Yes.
the sorry about colors.
Enough about tech.
Oh, that's funny. That is funny. But I mean, this is a love story that is kind of unique because you don't.
Oh, there we go.
You don't often see high school sweethearts that go and grow together, and 53 years. That you guys are in a unique fraternity.
Well, Joanne and I, we've known each other forever.
We've grown up together
through church. I mean, we went to church together, Sunday school together. And when I was a short, fat kid, she hated me.
Oh, stop it.
And she married me. So,
but Joanne, did he make a good burger?
I'm sorry?
Did he make a good burger?
Oh, yeah. He's still
yeah.
We have Paul made right hamburgers here at home sometimes too. So
yeah, at our 50th reunion, we had somebody came in and did the made right recipe for the burgers.
Nothing better.
Yeah, in fact, they opened up a burger joint here in our neighborhood in North Texas called Freddy's Steak Burgers, and it's that same old little flat, crispy on the edges kind of hamburgers and all. It brought back memories. That Shoops.
Like Shoops.
Yeah.
In fact, whenever we get back, we haven't been back to Hammond for a while. I have a cousin there that we have to go visit at some point because they're not doing well, but we always go to Made Rights. Shoops. I'm sorry. Shoops.
Yeah.
Because that was the Shoops. And
Mark Shoop was one of our classmates
classmates, yeah. And I knew Mark. We got to know each other. And the one time that we went, I told the waitress that, we traveled all the way from Sheboygan, Wisconsin, just to come here for a Shoops hamburger. And she said, "Oh my goodness, that's tremendous. Thank you so much." But, well, about a week later, my nephew from Pennsylvania, from Pittsburgh, was at Shoops. And he said, I traveled all the way from Pittsburgh just to come here for a Shoops. He said, that's fun because there was a guy here about a week ago from Sheboygan, Wisconsin that did the same thing. He said, yeah, that's my Uncle Leo. So it's kind of funny. But we try and get back to Shoops all the time.
So some things you don't remember. This has been a special day. I want you to spend a few minutes and I'll just talking to our dear friends from Hammond High School, as well as my extended audience all over the country. Your vision for the future from the eye of yourself, from the eye of your pulpit, and what do you envision we need to do as a community and all to make ourselves better and to make ourselves look at the future in a more positive way.
Well, obviously, and I'm not saying this because I get paid to say it, I think the younger generations need to get closer to their church, to their Bible-based church. They need to get closer to their church. They need to get closer to the teachings of their church. They need to start attending church. The last statistic I saw that was done by a group called Pew Research that does a lot of research in the behavior of Christians, the work of churches. I think right now on a given Sunday, about 30% of a given congregation attends church on a regular basis, which is kind of sad. It spikes up a little bit at Christmas time, although it didn't do that this year for obvious reasons. And it spikes up a little bit at Easter time. But every year, it just seems with every generation, it goes down. And I think we've got to get closer to that because the church and the synagogue, they have a message. Even the mosque has a message. And it's a positive message. And I think our older people, they still attend. I could say that my congregation is not a complete gray-haired congregation, but it's getting there. We have a few young families that come in and mix in. But I think our younger people, and I tell this to my kids and my grandkids all the time, you got to get closer to your church and you got to get closer to its teachings. And there's a message there, and Jesus Christ has a message. And actually, people think that Jesus Christ was in the wrong side of some people. Well, yeah, he was in the wrong side of the people that hated him, but he was basically, he lived a normal childhood. He went to the synagogue school. He played with kids. He was a regular guy that people just loved because he had a message. Yes, he was a son of God, but he came as a man to suffer the same things, to experience the same things we experience, so that he could bring us up to him. And whether you're in a synagogue, the Christian church, or the mosque, you need to return to those teachings and those traditions because they're solid, they're good. They may be a little to the right, but there's nothing wrong with that. So,
I would even take it a step further, Leo, and say that we are living in a time of a lot of interfaith marriages too. And I think it's important that we as individuals not only stay connected to our childhood teachings, but share those in our interfaith families also, and make sure, because most of the churches and synagogues, their doors and arms are open to you, whether you're part of the a gay and lesbian community, you're a part of an interfaith community, you're a part of a multi-ethnic mixed marriages, second and third marriages. But it's important because the teachings that we had as children are serving us as seniors now, but we need to share those with the next generation, the generations to come.
Well, in our church, in our archdiocese, I'd say 8 out of every 10 marriages are interfaith marriages. And back when I was in high school, an interfaith marriage was considered an unfortunate marriage.
That's right.
And I think it was the same thing in the Catholic Church. When I worked at the funeral home, I had the pleasure of interacting with a lot of the other pastors. And once they knew who I was, what I was, we would all talk shop. And the problems that we're facing are common problems in every church. They're not unique to any one church. They're with us right now. There's an issue of Greek versus English in some of the churches, but that the synagogue went through that. The Catholic Church went through that, and we're kind of going through that a little bit now, but it's going to solve itself. And it's not going to be my generation or even the next generation that solves that issue. It's going to be my grandson's generation.
That's right.
Solve that issue. So, but you do what you do. You do what you do. You do it the best you can. I've always taken pride in my liturgy. The reason why I'm still doing it, why I haven't retired, is because I really enjoy what I'm doing. I'm in a good situation here, a situation that I can handle. But as soon as I get to the point where I'm irrelevant and I just can't do it anymore, it's time to go and move a step aside, which will come in the next couple of years.
Well, and I think we all are hoping and praying for the day where we can walk back into our churches and synagogues and mosques, person to person, and shake each other's hands and hug each other and get that personal, emotional connection reestablished. Because right now it's kind of separating us in more ways than we really like.
Yes, it is.
Joanne, Leo, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to be with me on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure reconnecting with you, Leo, and it's uphill from here because I think we're going to stay connected together.
We are. One thing I'd ask you to do is, if it's okay with Ray Rada, if I could get his email or something, because I would like to reconnect with Ray too. I'd like to.
And I'll tell you what, if I don't have his email address, I'm sure Chuck Biller does.
Okay.
And perfect. we'll connect with him and get you both hooked up together. And the very, very best to you in the year ahead, to you and your congregation, to the two of you in your 53rd year together. God bless you. And thanks again for being my guest on Someone You Should Know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stuart. God bless you, and Happy New Year and all that good stuff.
Thank you. To my audience, as I always say at the end of my show, be yourself because everyone else is taken. Go out and make it a good day.